Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with pioneer food writer and cookbook author Joan Nathan, whose latest is My Life in Recipes. Welcome, Joan. So good to have you here.
It's great to be here.
So I'm excited about your book, but you must be over the moon. I mean, tell me, how do you encapsulate your amazing food life in recipes?
Well, it's hard. Here it is. This, and let me just show you the end papers. They're so extraordinary. They have letters that I've gotten from Julia Child, MFK Fisher, Alice Waters. It shows all kinds of things from my life. So, how do you encapsulate it? I don't know. You have to read it, but it's a memoir and 100 recipes. It's about to come out. I'm very excited, a little nervous, but the pre-reviews have been amazing. So I hope that everyone's going to like it. Um, it's a story of my life, starting from when I was 2 years old and I was at the Gordon School in Providence, Rhode Island, and my teacher wrote a report on me that I liked my morning lunch. And I guess I'm not so sure I like lunch so much, but I do like to eat. And it's been my whole life.
Well, so the hostess gene really started showing up really, really young for you.
It certainly did. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so is that your earliest food memory, or is that just someone's earliest food memory of you?
Is that my earliest food memory? I don't even remember. It's their memory of me. I mean, I don't. Sometimes you remember things because your parents show you pictures of them. I mean, there's a picture in there of me with chocolate cake early on one of my birthdays, and I noticed that all the people at the birthday were boys because they were my cousins and my brothers. No girls. I think this was my fourth and my fifth birthday. Um, but I always remember good food and having dinners with family and with friends throughout my life. I mean, I really like to cook for people much rather than just for myself.
Well, it is. So the subtitle of Taste Buds is food cooking and community, because community, it it's a part of the whole food cooking process, right?
Right, exactly. Absolutely. I think the best cooks are those that really chefs, I mean, are those who really like to cook for other people.
Well, you do hear these stories of the chefs that never eat, and it's just they just want to be sharing their food. Are you that chef, or you like to sit down with a plate and
I
enjoy as
I
well?
I like to sit down with a plate. I like to get my house looking nice before people come over. Um, and I even if the recipes don't exactly work, I like to feed them the food that I have.
Now, I'm having a little bit of trouble thinking that you have recipes that don't work,
Well, when you're testing recipes,
right?
but like the other day, I just made a recipe and I used a different kind of hot pepper, and it was so hot that I realized that people that were there would not like hot pepper, and I just couldn't serve it to them. So I quickly, at the last minute, thought of a different first course. They never
Okay.
do. It's never happened to me before.
Really? Okay, so what'd you end up serving?
Instead of that, well, I had some hummus that I had made in the refrigerator. I put that with some cut up veggies, and then I had smoked salmon, and then there's a really good pickled onion recipe in my book. So I sprinkled the pickled onions on top, and then there's this delicious cashew pesto in the book. And I put that on a I had wanted to find radicchio or endive for it, but I couldn't find any. At this time of year, it's really hard, believe it or not, on the East Coast in some grocery stores to find radicchio and endive. It was anyway. So I just took tiny little cups of lettuce, and I put the cashew pesto in it, and Everybody was, and I had made a delicious challah, so everybody was happy. They never knew.
I would have been happy too. It feels like creativity is just such an important element in the cooking process.
No question. Absolutely no question. But
So,
it depends on some people. Some people like to go with the food. I like to use food as a way to see other things. Not everybody does.
okay, for example, do you have an example?
Um, well, I love making salads, and I just take whatever I have in my refrigerator, and whoever's working with me, they usually make the salads, and it's your creative gene wakes up. It's easy to do that, or I might take, I don't know, like for Passover, I make a lemon tart with a lemon curd filling. It's really good. But then sometimes I might take that lemon curd pudding and filling and put it on a meringue instead, or just depends. I like to have fun with food.
Well, isn't that the purpose of food though, to have fun with it?
Absolutely.
Now, I'm sure you've gotten asked this all the time, but this is the first time I get to ask. What was it that transitioned you from someone who loves food and cooking to becoming you? How did that?
Well, I don't know. I just like anybody else, like you, or I first I started out when there weren't that many people in the Jewish food world. There were a few of us. And I wrote a book. My first book was called The Flavor of Jerusalem. And it was about the Jews, Christians, and Muslims in Jerusalem. And that, I think people really liked it. It sold 75,000 copies. And yeah, no, 25,000 copies, I think, 25,000, which was a lot in those days. This was 1975. And and then I just did one thing after another. I wasn't thinking of becoming anyone. I was thinking of doing what I like to do. So, and I wanted to be a mother. It was when I had worked 9 hour, 9 to 5 hour jobs before that. I'd worked for the mayor of Jerusalem, for Teddy Kollek, and I was his press attaché. I mean, that was more than a 9 to 5 job. And I'd worked a few other jobs in New York City, and another one after that. And when I got married, I just decided I want to work on my own. And so that's when I started writing cookbooks. But I thought it would be one cookbook. I've written 12 cookbooks. Just one led to another. And my publisher, once one thing is a success, they want you to keep writing. And that's, you're lucky. And then I was lucky enough to land on Judith Jones, who was Julia Child's editor. And so I wrote, I think, 4 or 5 cookbooks with her. And then with her, the person who followed her, Lexi Bloom, who's now the head of Knopf Cooks. And this is my second with Lexi, and she's done an amazing job with it.
And I'm sure you are the Julia child, the
Well,
Julia child of the Jewish world all the time.
yeah, I do get a lot of that. And I knew Julia, and she's in my book, but I gave her one of her 90th birthday parties at my home with some of my friends and her relatives. And my son and I cooked the meal, and we were all the way we have a house in Martha's Vineyard, and we were there all summer. All the way home on the ride, we just discussed what we're going to make for Julia Child. And we decided to make the simplest food because we thought that's what we really liked, was simple food. And it was a great party.
I'm sure, like for the books, literally and figuratively, of course. Uh, I, I have so many thoughts and questions. So much has changed in the food world from when you got started. What do you think of the industry now versus? back in the early days?
Well, in the early days, there's a lot more journalism that went out of the kitchen to find food for the kitchen. I mean, there were, on the one hand, there were less foreign products available, but it made you go to ethnic food stores wherever you were. You didn't get them online. You didn't get them sort of watered down at Whole Foods and other places. And you'd go to people's houses to interview them. I mean, I can't tell you how many people interview me that have never read anything by me, or, today. It's just astonishing. Um, but the really good journalists have done their homework, you
It,
know.
mhm. And it's well, and so so obviously I've known who who you are because you are Joan Nathan, and I interviewed Dana from Dana's Table on the show a few months back. And so when I saw your book was coming out, I'm like, "Ooh, this is my perfect opportunity." So I think one of I guess the gifts of technology is the access because we're on two different sides of the country and we get to talk about food.
Mhm.
So that I would think that's one of the benefits of the new wave of
Right,
food.
absolutely. Well, the internet for sure, but it's also, yeah, I think that Zoom is a great thing. But it's also, when you're there inside somebody's house and watching them cook, it's more intimate.
That's true. We do not have smell-o-vision or taste-o-vision via Zoom and
No,
StreamYard,
I like
which is
that.
what we're recording on. Okay, so I feel like that's like it's like the Jetsons, right? So
Yeah.
one day we'll be able to push a button and your food will instantly be in front of me.
Absolutely.
What advice do you have for whether it's food lovers or food writers or people in the age of food now? Because the other thing that I think is different is that anyone has access to share their love of food and cooking now.
Right. And people do that. Yeah. I mean, there's so many more people interested in it now. That's for sure. Um, and I think that's a great thing. I last week I did for charity a challah lesson for 8 people, and the young, I don't know how old she was, 9 years old maybe. He had done more science. It was a very smart family that was here, and you could see that she had done more than I've ever done. I mean, she just knew so much. She was making her own sourdough. I mean, I did that, and then it's just didn't stay after it enough because I travel a lot, and it just wasn't any good anymore. But this young girl is going to go very far, and I think that's what's happening today. That people, and results are quick in cooking, so kids like it a lot.
Yeah, there is an instant gratification factor for sure. And this was years ago. My nephew was at summer camp and he did cooking, but what they made was like guacamole or salsa. It's
Right.
still good. I mean,
That,
and I'm a reformed non-cook, so salads were my jam until I realized the Instant Pot, you could put in ingredients and then go do something else, and then it becomes a meal. So, and that to me opened the door because when cooking is easy, you want to do more of it.
right.
And then the benefits of it is you have food. Do you do you have I'm gonna ask you to play favorites. Do you have a favorite food that you like to make that's your like go-to?
Well, I do like making challah. It's something that feels good in my fingers. It never comes out the same. Um, it's quickly done. Yeah, I like that. I like making hummus because I know my kids like it. Um, I like using eggplant in cooking. Uh, I like all kinds of cooking. Just depend. I saw an article in the Times magazine I'm going to make, which I think it's with sauteed onions, red onions, and green grapes and ricotta cheese. And then you just put it on bread. And I thought, oh, that sounds delicious. I'm going to make that, you know. But usually I make things that I'm testing for people, but I've decided this is my last book. So what am I going to test anymore? I don't know. I'll have to see what happens. Maybe I won't cook.
I don't think that's going to be possible. I just cannot see that. Oh, I've cooked enough. I've done it long enough. I'm done. I I think oh, what do you hope more than anything else that people get from this book?
Maybe I hope more than anything else, an inspiration for living a good life. That's, I think, the most important thing I want to teach people. You know,
It's
and
important.
it includes food. You know, because it's the process of living that I learned from my mother. You know, she never cooked at all until we always had a cook when I was a kid, until she was in her 70s, maybe. And she started cooking. And then a friend of hers, after my father died, um, her husband died, and she decided she didn't mind cleaning up. So my mother didn't like to clean up, nor do I particularly. So she cooked whenever they were together, and her friend cleaned up. So that really, but I realized what my mother liked about it was the process of cooking. And that's what I like. You know, the process of finding a recipe, get the ingredients and cooking it for your friends. I mean, I'm only a few times since my husband died, um, bought food just for me that was special. And I just don't like doing that. I like doing it for other people.
And then the bonus is you get to share and enjoy, which is part of the experience.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
do, I always like to ask my guests to share a recipe because I don't think it's fair to talk about food without, giving them so they can't be in your kitchen. They can bring your kitchen into their home. What recipe would you like to share?
Well, maybe I'll share this lemon torte that I love to make for Passover. How about that?
I Sounds delicious. I may need to make that one myself.
It's a pecan torte with lemon curd filling. And you know, if it seems too hard to cut the torte to put it in, just put the filling on top. And this lemon curd filling is the best. It's really good filling. Okay. And I learned this recipe many, many years ago in Jerusalem. It was an almond torte, and then they put like an almond, a lemon, sort of, they would drool and seep it through the torte. And then I realized that I'd much rather have lemon curd that really intensifies the lemon. So I changed the recipe, but it's still the basic recipe from Jerusalem. Anyway, it's called Passover lemon torte with lemon curd filling, and it serves about 8. So for the torte, there's a fourth of a cup of matzah meal, plus more for the pan, 8 large eggs separated, a cup of sugar, a fourth of a teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/2 tablespoon fresh lemon juice, a cup of pecan halves coarsely ground, and or you could use almonds, either one. And the lemon curd filling, there are 3 lemons, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 3 large eggs, and a fourth of a cup of unsalted butter, vegan butter or coconut oil. You preheat the oven, and this is from My Life in Recipes that's coming out on the 9th. Preheat the oven to 325 degrees. Dust a 9-inch springform pan with matzah meal. Beat the egg yolks with the sugar and the salt until they're smooth and pale lime yellow. Gradually add the 1/4 cup of matzah meal, the lemon zest, and lemon juice. fold in the pecans. In a separate bowl, whip the egg whites until stiff but not dry by hand or using a hand mixer or stand mixer. Gently fold them into the yolk mixer. Scrape the batter into the prepared spring-form pan and bake on the middle rack for 45 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean when inserted. Let it cool while you make the lemon curd. To make the filling, grate the rind of the lemons to get 2 tablespoons zest, then juice the lemons to get 3/4 cups of juice. Whisk the sugar and the eggs in a medium saucepan. Gradually add the lemon juice and zest. Add the butter or coconut oil and cook over medium heat, stirring constantly and being careful not to boil until the lemon thickens into a curd-like custard, about 5 minutes. Set aside to cool. Once the cake is cool, split it into 2 round layers. Spread the lemon curd filling, reserving a few tablespoons on the cut side of the bottom round, and the second round top side up. Then spread the remaining curd, dot with blueberries, and serve. And you can make the cake about a month in advance and freeze it. And you can make the curd a few days in advance and just hold it in the refrigerator. So it's really an easy and delicious Passover cake.
Or really anytime cake. Think
Or
about it.
yeah. Well, I use the lemon curd. It's from my French cookbook. I use a lemon curd just in a regular pie crust. It's my favorite dessert, really.
I don't think it would make it to the pie crust for me. I would just, oh, just like one more taste.
I mean,
Oh,
I've toyed
right?
with using, bought lemon curd, but it's so easy to make lemon curd that I just, and every time I make any recipe that I do, I think about the people who gave me the recipe. I might have changed the recipe so that you'll all use it, but it connects with me, with my past, and I feel as if the past is your future too. That I don't know what my kids. I'm not sure they'll make gefilte fish anymore, but I hope that they'll make a lot of my recipes in the future.
What an amazing legacy for sure. Not to left turn, but I have to ask, what is your perfect bagel? What kind of bagel and what do you like on it?
Oh, hmm. Well, I like a bagel that is thin, sort of like a Montreal bagel. There's a bagel bakery up the street who makes them like this, sort of like a Montreal bagel, but without the sugar, or maybe a very slight amount of, not even, it's malt that makes it a little bit sweet, but with salt, because Montreal bakers don't have salt. And I know that in Nate and Al's bagels, they cut out the inside when you're eating it. It seems to be an LA thing, but you don't have to really cut if the bagels are not so fluffy, you don't have to cut out all the innards. And I like, first of all, I like a bagel that's just buttered and toasted. That's really, I like that. But second to that, I guess I like a little bit of whitefish salad. I have a really good recipe in my book that's on it. That'll be delicious, but I don't like the whitefish that's smothered in mayonnaise. And otherwise, I like smoked salmon with a very thin bit of cream cheese on it. But I do like bagels.
Well, a few episodes ago, someone we got into the topic of bagels, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to ask everybody the bagel question because it's just something everybody's got an opinion, right?
Right.
Everybody loves their bagels in a certain way or different ways. So thank you for sharing that. Do you have any final food for thought?
A food for thought. Well, yeah, I think, Passover is coming up. And what I would do is find a few new recipes, but also find some old family recipes that makes you different from the rest of the world, and that will take your family into the future to eat what the family ate. And I think, there's no question that Passover is a history lesson, especially this year. Um, and eating from our past gives us strength for the future, and it tells us who we are. And there's no better holiday for that than Passover.
Absolutely. Really good point. Could not agree with you more. We bring our history, but I love what you said, how we make history, and we do that through the food that we pass on
Right.
to the generations. Yeah.
Just look at, here's the book, and you'll have my book.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to ask, where could people learn more about you? I know you can grab My Life and Recipes at your favorite place to buy books. Where else can people learn more about the wonderful you?
Well, you can look at my website, joannathan.com, and all the events that I'll be having in LA will be on it. And I'll be there from about uh, April 18th to August 2nd.
Oh, so you're going to spend quite a bit of time on our
Well,
part of the.
I will. I mean, I'm going to Portland for a long time, but in San Francisco, but for the most part, I'll be in LA. I have my kids there, my grandchildren, but there'll even be a Passover Seder at Akasha's restaurant on the Monday, first night of Seder. And there'll be a lot of other really fun events that I'll be taking part in.
Wonderful. So
So
if you.
I'll see you there at one thing or another, or any of your readers or viewers.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for spending time with me today. And you don't have to be on the East Coast or the West Coast to get all the goodness from Joan Nathan. Just go to joannathan.com or grab a copy of My Life and Recipes. It is definitely, don't read this book hungry. I will say that, or read it in the kitchen where you've got snacks nearby. Be prepared. Thank you again, Joan Nathan, for joining me, and thank you for tuning into Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe on YouTube and/or your favorite podcast platform. And you can go to jewishjournal.com/podcast to get recipes and articles that go with each episode. So the lemon curd, the Passover cake will be there. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, experiment with recipes, make food with love, and enjoy it with the ones you love. Until next time, bon appetit.